The stars above the alien capital world glowed like rivers of silver fire. It was a world called Velora, home of the Ilari Empire, and for the first time in history, a human ship was allowed to land there. The air shimmered with strange colors as Daniel, a young human diplomat, stepped out of the craft and looked upon a city that seemed to touch the sky itself. Towers of crystal stretched high into the clouds, glowing faintly in the light of two moons. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He had trained for years to be here, but no book or lesson could prepare him for the feeling of walking into the heart of an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. Humanity was new among the stars barely 100 years since they had left Earth's orbit, and many species saw them as little more than children. Today, Daniel had to prove otherwise. Soldiers in silver armor lined the marble steps of the Grand Council Hall. Their faces were calm, but their eyes followed every move Daniel made. He walked forward slowly, refusing to let his steps show hesitation. His people back on Earth were watching, waiting, hoping he would not falter. Inside the hall, light streamed through tall windows carved into patterns of wings and flames. Hundreds of leaders from across the galaxy had gathered, scaled beings with golden eyes, feathered diplomats whose voices sounded like music, towering creatures with skin like stone. Among them sat the Ilari royal family, their presence both graceful and intimidating. At the center was Princess Nira. Her skin shimmered like pearl, and her eyes glowed faintly with shades of violet. She wore a crown that curved upward like branches of silver trees. Nira had listened to many stories about humans fragile, emotional, quick to anger, unfit for galactic power. When she saw Daniel walking with steady steps and calm eyes, she found herself watching him with unexpected interest. The Emperor, Nira's father, raised his hand for silence. His voice was deep, echoing through the chamber. "Human envoy. You stand before the Council of Velora. Speak, and show why your people deserve a place among us." Daniel stepped forward. The chamber grew silent, filled only with the soft hum of the light crystals above. Many expected him to bow low or speak with nervous words. Instead, Daniel bowed just enough to show respect, then lifted his head and spoke clearly. "Honored Council, I come not to beg for my people's survival. I come to stand as their voice. Humanity may be new to the stars, but we have walked through fire to reach them. We have known wars, hunger, storms, and silence of the void. Yet, we endure. We are not here to weaken your order. We are here to add our strength to it." His words echoed through the hall. Some council members frowned, some whispered, and some even scoffed. But Daniel did not lower his eyes. He looked at them all, one by one, with the calm strength of someone who believed in every word he spoke. Nira felt something stir within her. She had expected fear or arrogance, but what she saw was different. It was courage, not the loud kind that boasted, but the quiet kind that stood firm even when outnumbered. One of the rival delegates, a tall warrior from the Kargan species, stood and pointed at Daniel. "Humans are weak. They lack the claws, the weapons, the lifespans of greater races. Why should we waste a seat on such short-lived creatures?" The council murmured in agreement. The Kargan's voice was sharp, his presence heavy with scorn. All eyes turned to Daniel, waiting to see if he would tremble or fall silent. Instead, Daniel looked directly at the warrior and spoke with calm steel. "You call us weak because we are not like you. But weakness is not in our bones. Strength is not only in claws or long lives. Strength is in the will to keep standing when the storm does not end. If survival alone made a people strong, then humanity would never have reached these stars. We are here because we endure. And that, honorable council, is true strength." The hall fell silent again. For a long moment, no one spoke. The Kargan warrior growled but sat down, unable to answer. Princess Nira leaned back in her seat, her violet eyes fixed on the human diplomat. He had not shouted. He had not pleaded. Yet, He had turned an insult into a declaration of honor. She could not deny it. His words had struck like a blade, clean and precise. When the council dismissed for the day, whispers followed Daniel as he walked out of the chamber. Some voices spoke with doubt, others with curiosity, and a few even with new respect. From her balcony above, Nira watched him leave. She had thought humans would be easy to dismiss, but one human had already unsettled her expectations. He had spoken with courage that even seasoned diplomats sometimes lacked. For the first time, she wondered if the stories about humans were wrong. And though she would never admit it aloud, the alien princess found herself wanting to see what Daniel would do next. The council chamber was full again the next morning. Sunlight from Velora's twin moons poured through the crystal windows, casting soft colors across the polished floor. Leaders from many species sat in their places, waiting for the next round of talks. Daniel walked into the hall with steady steps, though his heart beat fast inside his chest. He knew the council was divided. Some saw promise in humanity, while others saw only weakness. He would have to face both today. Princess Nira sat at her father's side, her violet eyes watching him closely. She had spent the night thinking about the human diplomat. His calm reply to the Kargan warrior still lingered in her mind. She wanted to know if it had been luck or if Daniel truly had that kind of strength within him. The session began with formal discussions, trade routes, resource sharing, security measures, but tension grew when the same Kargan warrior from before stood up again. His tall form towered over most delegates. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "This human speaks well," the Kargan said, his sharp teeth flashing in the light. "But words are wind. Let him prove his courage, if he has any. Why should we trust a species that has barely touched the stars? Why should we give them a voice equal to ours?" Whispers filled the chamber. Some nodded in agreement, others shook their heads. Daniel stood, calm and firm. He did not raise his voice, but each word carried weight. Strength is not shown by crushing those smaller than you. It is shown by protecting peace, even when it costs something. Humanity has fought its own battles. We do not ask for pity, and we do not ask for favors. We ask for the chance to prove that we stand for more than ourselves. The Kargan narrowed his eyes. "You hide behind soft words, human. Do you dare speak against me directly?" The chamber grew tense. Many delegates leaned forward, waiting to see if the human would bow or remain silent. Daniel took a slow breath and faced the towering warrior. His voice remained steady. "You say humans are weak because we are new to the stars. Yet I see a species that has ruled for centuries, afraid of sharing even a single seat at the table. Tell me, which of us shows fear?" A silence spread through the chamber like a wave. Some gasped. Others tried to hide their surprise. The Kargan warrior's hand twitched, but he said nothing. His pride was struck, yet Daniel had spoken without insult, only truth. From her seat, Nira felt her chest tighten. She had not expected Daniel to be so bold. Many diplomats would have avoided direct challenge, fearing anger from a stronger race. But this human did not step back. He did not flinch. He answered fire with calm steel. Her father, the emperor, lifted his hand to silence the murmurs. The human has spoken with courage. Let the council judge by wisdom, not pride. The matter will be decided when we see if his people can uphold their words. The meeting moved on, but the air remained heavy. Daniel had won silence, but silence could be as dangerous as anger. Later, when the hall emptied, Daniel walked through the long corridor lined with glowing pillars. His thoughts were sharp, yet he kept his face calm. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Princess Nira approaching. She carried herself with grace, every movement precise. Yet her eyes were not cold as they had been before. "You are either very brave or very foolish," she said, her voice calm but curious. "To speak against a Kargan warrior so openly. Few would dare it. Daniel gave a faint smile. If no one dares, then no one changes anything. My people cannot afford silence. We stand here because we must. Nira studied him for a moment. She had heard many voices in the council, some proud, some cunning, some filled with empty promises. This human's voice was different. It carried no arrogance, only conviction. You risk making enemies, she said softly. Some will not forgive words like those. Daniel nodded. Perhaps. But if I stay silent, then I betray not only my people but myself. Courage is not the absence of fear, princess. It is choosing to act even when fear is present. Nira felt something shift within her. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. She had been raised to see courage as the strength of warriors, the power of armies. But this human spoke of courage as something deeper, something quieter. For the first time, she wondered if humanity's strength was not in their weapons, but in their spirit. She said nothing more, only gave him a long look before turning away. Yet as she walked back toward the royal chambers, her thoughts stayed on the human diplomat who had faced fire with calm and had not burned. That night, as the twin moons rose over Velora, rumors spread through the city. Some said the human was reckless. Others said he was dangerous. But more than a few whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity had a place among the stars after all. And in the silence of her chambers, Princess Nira admitted to herself something she would not say aloud. The human diplomat's courage had left her speechless once again. The council sessions continued over the next days, but the air inside the grand hall grew heavier with each meeting. Arguments between rival factions sharpened, and whispers of distrust spread like shadows along the crystal walls. Daniel noticed the change quickly. He had learned long ago that true danger was not always loud. Sometimes it was the quiet, the small signs that most ignored. He saw guards changing posts at odd hours. He saw messengers moving quickly with no record of their arrival. He heard faint clicks in the translation devices, as though someone listened from outside the chamber. None of these things could be called proof, but together they painted a troubling picture. One evening, Daniel walked alone across the marble courtyard. The city glowed with blue and gold lights, its towers stretching like glass trees into the sky. The air was filled with the hum of strange birds with wings that shimmered like liquid silver. Yet Daniel's mind was not on the beauty of Velora. His thoughts circled the unease he had felt all day. He stopped when he heard a soft voice behind him. You walk as if you carry a secret, human. Daniel turned and saw Princess Nira. She was dressed in a flowing cloak that caught the moonlight, making her appear almost unreal. Her guards stayed at a distance, giving them privacy. Daniel bowed lightly. Perhaps I do, Princess. I have noticed things that do not fit. Something is wrong in the city. Nira tilted her head slightly. You speak of danger. Yes, Daniel answered simply. It may be nothing. But it may also be something more. Too many things are happening in silence. For a moment, Nira said nothing. Her eyes, glowing faintly violet, studied him with sharp focus. Finally, she spoke. The council has always been a place of power. Power draws enemies. You are wise to notice what others ignore. Daniel hesitated, then asked carefully, would you help me look deeper? Alone, I have little reach here. But your voice carries weight. Nira raised an elegant brow. No human had ever asked her such a thing, not directly. Most bowed, most begged. This one simply asked with quiet certainty, as if he expected her to consider. Why risk yourself, she asked. You are a diplomat. If there is true danger, it is not your duty to chase it. Daniel's answer came without pause. Because peace cannot survive if it is built on lies. If the council is being poisoned from the inside, then I cannot stay silent. The words struck her. She had expected fear, or excuses, but what she heard was resolve. "Very well," Nira said at last. "I will help you look. But if we are wrong, we will anger powerful houses. Are you ready for that?" Daniel gave a faint smile. "I am used to standing where I am not wanted, princess." That night, they moved through the quieter parts of the capital, leaving behind guards and attendants. Nero led Daniel down a narrow stair carved into the side of the council tower. It opened into old tunnels beneath the city, tunnels most nobles had forgotten. The air was damp and cool, carrying the smell of stone and metal. They walked in silence, listening. Faint voices echoed in the distance. As they drew closer, they saw a group of figures gathered around a hidden chamber lit by dim blue lamps. None wore the silver armor of the emperor's guards. Instead, they wore dark masks that covered their faces. Daniel and Nira stayed in the shadows, listening. One masked figure spoke in a low, sharp tone. "The plan moves forward. The emperor trusts the council too much. He will not see the blade until it is at his throat. When the chaos begins, humanity will be the easiest to blame. A new race, untrusted, untested, no one will question it." Nira's hand tightened on the edge of her cloak. Her father was the target. And the human delegation was meant to be framed for his death. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm when he whispered, "They want to kill your father. And they want my people to pay for it." The masked voices continued, but Daniel and Nira had heard enough. They stepped back into the shadows, moving quickly but quietly until they returned to the stair. Only when they reached the upper halls did Nira finally speak. "You were right," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "There is a conspiracy." Daniel looked at her seriously. "Now you understand why I cannot stay silent. This is not just about humans. It is about the future of your empire." Nira studied him, seeing the steady fire in his eyes. She had thought him bold in the council, but now she saw something more. He was willing to risk his life for truth, even in a world not his own. "Most would run from danger like this," she said softly. "But you run toward it?" Daniel's voice was steady. "If I turn away, princess, then I fail not only my people but also yours. And I believe peace is worth fighting for." For a long moment, Nira was silent. The violet glow of her eyes softened as she looked at the human diplomat. She had doubted him, tested him, even warned him. Yet still, he stood. And for the first time, Princess Nira felt that this human's courage might change more than just the outcome of the council. It might change the fate of both their worlds. The grand hall glittered with light as the banquet began. Long tables of crystal stretched across the chamber, filled with fruits that glowed softly, steaming dishes from half a dozen worlds, and tall cups of silver liquid. Music floated through the air, played by alien instruments that gave a sound like 1,000 bells ringing together. It was meant to be a night of peace, a celebration of the council's progress. But Daniel felt no peace. As he walked among the guests, smiling politely, his eyes searched the hall again and again. He could not forget the words whispered in the tunnels. A plot was moving forward. He did not know when or how, but he knew it would strike soon. Princess Nira noticed his unease. She stood beside her father, her cloak shining faintly under the crystal lamps. When Daniel's eyes met hers across the room, she gave the smallest nod. She felt it too, the tension hidden beneath the music and laughter. Delegates from dozens of species talked and laughed, though many kept their glances sharp, watching rivals as much as friends. The Kargan warrior stood near the feast table, speaking loudly, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. He gave Daniel a sharp look but said nothing. Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering rang out. A servant carrying a tray had stumbled. Many guests turned to look, but Daniel's eyes went higher, to the balcony above. In the shadows, a figure moved too fast, too silent. "Down!" Daniel shouted. Before the words fully left his mouth, the first strike came. Masked figures dropped from the balcony, their weapons gleaming like shards of night. Cries filled the chamber as the banquet turned to chaos. The emperor's guards rushed forward, but the attackers were ready. Blades of energy cut through the hall, scattering the musicians and guests. Delegates dove under tables or fled to the side doors. Daniel did not run. He pushed forward, shielding a group of smaller delegates caught near the center. A glowing blade slashed toward him, and though he carried no weapon, he seized a fallen guard's staff and blocked it with both hands. The strike shook his arms, but he stood his ground. "Get them out," he shouted to the frightened delegates, and they hurried toward safety. Nira saw him from across the hall, and her eyes widened. The human was not a soldier, yet he fought like one who refused to fall. She pulled her own ceremonial blade from her belt, a weapon she carried more for tradition than war, but in that moment, it gleamed with true purpose. "Father, stay behind the guard," she ordered the emperor, before rushing into the fray. Side by side, Daniel and Nira fought through the chaos. Daniel blocked another strike, his arms burning, and Nira cut across the attacker's arm, forcing the masked figure back. "They want your father," Daniel shouted over the clash. "We have to move him." Nira nodded, her face set with fierce resolve. "This way, the old tunnels." Together, they forced their way toward the side of the hall where a narrow door stood hidden behind a banner. Two guards fell in behind them, carrying the emperor. But the attackers pursued, throwing blades of light that struck the walls and floor, filling the air with sparks. Daniel grabbed Nira's arm, pulling her aside as a blade cut past where she had stood a second earlier. She looked at him in surprise, but there was no time for words. They dashed through the door and into the narrow stairwell beyond. The sounds of battle echoed behind them, shouts, screams, the clash of metal and light. Down the stairs they ran, into the ancient tunnels beneath Velora. The air was damp, the walls carved with symbols from centuries past. Their footsteps echoed as they pressed forward, the emperor supported between the guards. But the masked attackers were not far behind. Their voices carried through the dark, sharp and cold. "They will not stop," Daniel said quietly as they ran. His chest ached, but his eyes burned with steady fire. Nero looked at him as they reached a wide chamber deep below the city. The dim blue crystals in the walls gave just enough light to see his face, sweat, dust, and determination. She realized then that this human had risked his life again and again, not only for his people but for hers. "You could have run," she said softly. "No one would have blamed you." Daniel shook his head. "If peace is worth fighting for, then so is your father's life. If he falls, the galaxy falls with him." The guards set the emperor gently against the wall, preparing to defend him. Daniel gripped the staff tighter, ready for the next wave of attackers. Nira stood beside him, her violet eyes fierce, her blade shining in the dim light. For a moment, human and princess stood shoulder to shoulder, two worlds, two people, bound by the same fire. From the darkness ahead, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The attackers were coming. The banquet was over. The true battle was about to begin. The tunnels of Velora stretched like endless veins beneath the shining city above. The walls were carved with old Ilari markings, symbols of battles long past, of kings and queens who had ruled before the stars themselves were charted. The air was damp and heavy, filled with the faint drip of water echoing from somewhere far away. Daniel walked at the front, staff in hand, his steps steady though his chest still burned from the fight in the banquet hall. Behind him, Princess Nira guided her father, while the two guards followed close, their eyes sharp for danger. Every sound in the dark carried weight, the rustle of their cloaks, the uneven breaths, the soft scrape of boots against stone. Somewhere in the distance, the attackers' footsteps echoed faintly, a reminder that they were still hunted. After a long stretch of silence, Nira spoke softly. "You fight with no training," she said. Yet you stood against blades meant for soldiers. Daniel gave a small, tired smile without turning his head. Humans have always had to fight with less. We did not grow strong with long lives or great weapons. We learned to use what we had. Nira studied him in the dim light. You mean your world was so harsh? Daniel slowed, then nodded. Earth was not kind to us. Storms, famine, wars, we faced them all. Sometimes we nearly destroyed ourselves. But every time, we survived. We learned. We stood again. That is why I spoke in the council as I did. Not because humans are mighty, but because we endure. The princess walked beside him now, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the crystal light of the tunnels. She had always thought of courage as something loud, warriors charging into battle, armies marching across fields. But the courage she saw in Daniel was different. It was quiet, steady, unshaken even when the world turned against him. You carry your people's weight as if it were your own, she said gently. Even here, far from your home. Daniel glanced at her, his face calm. It is my duty. But it is also more than duty. If peace is to have meaning, it must be shared by all. If only one survives, then none truly win. For a while, they walked in silence. The emperor leaned on his guards, tired but listening. His eyes, older and wiser, watched the human with interest. At last, Nero broke the silence again. In my people's history, humans are written as a young race. Too quick to anger, too fragile, too short-lived. I believed those stories. Until now. Daniel gave a faint laugh. Stories often paint us in simple colors. But humanity is more complicated than that. We make mistakes, many mistakes. But we also dream. We dream of the stars, of peace, of building something greater than ourselves. Nero felt the words linger in her chest. Dreaming, she had heard that word before, but never with such weight. The Ilari lived long lives, they planned, they ruled, they preserved. But dreaming was something different. Dreaming was daring to hope for what seemed impossible. For the first time, she understood why humans, though new to the stars, had already begun to shape them. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, where broken statues lay half buried in dust. The group paused to rest. The emperor sat against the wall, the guards standing watch near the entrance. Daniel lowered himself onto a stone ledge, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. Nira sat across from him, studying the human diplomat in the faint glow. His clothes were torn, dust streaked his face, and his hands were raw from holding the staff. Yet his eyes still carried the same steady fire. You are far from home, she said quietly. Do you not long to return? Daniel's gaze softened. Every day. I think of Earth often, the oceans, the mountains, the small places where children play. But I also know that if I return without securing peace, then all those children may one day face war. That thought gives me strength to stay. The princess lowered her eyes for a moment. She had grown up in a palace of crystal, protected by guards, guided by tutors. She had never feared for survival the way this human had, never carried the weight of a world on her shoulders. Yet she felt that she was learning more from him than from all the books she had studied. Perhaps, she said softly, it is not your weapons or your numbers that make humanity strong. It is this, your spirit. Daniel met her eyes and gave a quiet nod. Maybe. Or maybe it is simply that we have no other choice. A faint sound echoed through the tunnels, pulling their attention back to the present. The masked pursuers were still searching. Their voices carried like whispers of steel in the dark. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Daniel stood again, his tired body moving with purpose. Nira rose beside him, her blade in hand. In that silent chamber, with danger closing in, the two stood shoulder to shoulder once more. They were no longer just diplomat and princess, no longer just human and Ilari. For that moment, they were two souls carrying the weight of their worlds together. And in the quiet space between the echoes of danger, Princess Nira realized something she had never thought possible. The courage of one human had begun to change not only her thoughts, but her heart. The tunnels beneath Velora were quiet now, but Daniel knew the danger was far from over. The masked attackers had been delayed, but they would return, and the council above had no idea how close they had come to disaster. Time was running out. He turned to Princess Nira, who had helped guide her father safely through the ancient paths. We cannot wait for them to strike again, he said. If we do, it will be too late. The conspiracy is bigger than we thought. The council must know the truth and soon. Nira looked at him, her violet eyes soft but determined. And if you are wrong, she asked. If you accuse the wrong people. Daniel shook his head. I cannot be wrong, princess. I have seen their plan. I heard them speak. We cannot stay hidden and hope it stops itself. If we fail to act, countless lives, yours, mine, my people's, will be at risk. The princess nodded, understanding the weight of his decision. Very well, she said. Then we go together. My voice will speak for my people, and yours for yours. Let the council see what courage looks like. They returned to the upper corridors in silence, every step echoing softly against the crystal floors. The city above was calm, unaware of the danger that had lurked beneath its streets. Daniel and Nira moved quickly but carefully, avoiding the guards who might have questioned their sudden appearance. As they reached the council chamber, Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment that could either save countless lives or cost him everything. He held his staff tightly, the weight of his people pressing on his shoulders, but his eyes were steady. Inside, the council was meeting once more. Delegates argued over trade routes and resource allocations, their voices rising and falling in practiced rhythm. But Daniel and Nira stepped forward, and suddenly, all eyes turned to them. Princess Nira, a feathered delegate asked, her voice filled with surprise. Why do you enter without the guards? Nira did not answer immediately. Instead, she turned to the council and raised her hand. I bring urgent news, she said. The peace we are building here is under threat. There is a conspiracy against this council, and those responsible plan to strike soon. A murmur ran through the room. Many faces showed disbelief, others grew pale. Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I overheard the conspirators myself. They plan to kill the Emperor and frame humanity. If we do not act now, the council will fall into chaos, and countless lives will be lost. Some delegates gasped. Others looked ready to call him a liar. The Kargan warrior sneered, his arms crossed. And how, human, do we know your words are true? Perhaps this is a trick to weaken us. Daniel met his gaze without flinching. I risk everything by speaking. I have nothing to gain from lies. My life, my people, even my future, everything is at stake. But the truth must be told. And I ask you to act, not on faith alone, but because courage cannot be hidden. Nira stepped closer, her violet eyes glowing faintly under the chamber lights. I heard him correctly, she said. I saw the evidence myself. We have no time for doubt. If we delay, the conspirators will succeed. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of energy from the ceiling crystals. Delegates exchanged worried glances. Some leaned toward each other in whispers, debating the weight of the words they had just heard. Finally, the Emperor stood, his tall frame commanding attention. Speak, human, he said, his voice deep and calm. Tell us everything you know. The council will judge, and we will act. Daniel nodded and began to describe the conspiracy in detail, the masked figures, their plans to attack, and their intent to frame humanity. He explained what he and Nira had witnessed in the tunnels. Every word he spoke was measured, calm, and precise. The council listened, some skeptical, some horrified. Nira added her own observations, confirming every detail. The evidence was undeniable. The conspirators could no longer hide in shadows. The Kargan warrior's face turned red with anger, but even he could not dispute what was spoken. One by one, delegates began to agree, calling for immediate action. Guards were dispatched, secure measures were reinforced, and the masked conspirators were discovered and detained before they could carry out the next strike. When the chaos settled, the emperor looked at Daniel with quiet respect. "Your courage has saved more than my life, human," he said. "You have saved this council, this empire, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Few would risk everything for others in a world that is not their own." Daniel felt relief wash over him, but he did not smile. "It was not just my courage, Your Majesty," he said. "It was the courage of everyone who stands for truth and peace. And it was yours, Princess Nira. Without your help, I could not have acted." Nira met his gaze and gave a faint nod. There was a quiet understanding between them now, a bond forged not by duty, but by shared courage and determination. For the first time since arriving on Velora, Daniel felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. The council was safe, the conspiracy had been stopped, and humanity had proven it could stand among the stars. And though he did not say it aloud, he knew this gamble, this daring step into danger, had changed the future of both their worlds forever. The council chamber was quiet again, but this time it was a calm that carried relief rather than tension. The masked conspirators had been captured, and their plans had been revealed before any harm came to the emperor or the human delegation. The city of Velora had avoided disaster, thanks to the courage of a single human diplomat and the princess who had trusted him. Daniel stood near the entrance, his staff in hand, still weary from the recent events. The energy of the chamber felt different now. What had been tension and suspicion was replaced by respect. Delegates who had doubted him looked at him with curiosity and even admiration. Some still whispered about his audacity, but the fear of failure was gone. Princess Nira approached, her violet eyes calm and thoughtful. She walked beside him quietly, letting the moment linger before she spoke. "You have done what few could even imagine," she said softly. "You risked your life for a council that barely trusted you, and for people who did not yet know your worth." Daniel bowed slightly. "I did what I had to do, Princess. My people, your empire peace is worth every risk. That is why I stood." Nira studied him, her eyes searching for the human behind the words. She had witnessed his courage, seen him act when most would have fled, and felt the strength in his quiet determination. His bravery had not come from weapons or soldiers, but from something deeper, something that could not be measured in numbers or years. For a long moment, neither spoke. The council members observed quietly, sensing the bond forming between human and princess, though none could yet understand it fully. Finally, Nira stepped closer, her voice carrying through the hall with gentle authority. "Daniel," she said, "your courage has done more than save the council. It has changed how I see your people and how I see you." Daniel met her gaze, his own eyes steady. "I did not act to impress, Princess. I acted because it was right. I did what anyone should do if they have the chance to prevent harm." Nira's lips curved slightly into a smile, one that was rare and full of warmth. "And yet, you have left me speechless," she admitted. "Not with power, not with skill, but with the way you stood. With the way you believed in truth and honor, even when it could have cost you everything." Daniel felt a quiet warmth in his chest. He had never sought recognition or praise, yet he understood the depth of her words. They were not a reward, they were an acknowledgement of something shared between them, a bond forged in danger and trust. The emperor stepped forward, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You have seen the courage of humanity firsthand, Nira. And you have witnessed the spirit of this diplomat. Daniel, you have done your people and mine a great service. Your name will be remembered here. Daniel nodded, humbled. Thank you, Your Majesty. It is my honor to serve peace. The council slowly began to resume its normal proceedings, discussions turning to trade agreements, alliances, and rebuilding trust between the different species. Yet Daniel and Nira remained for a moment, silent, understanding that their shared experience had changed more than the council's outcome. It had changed both of them. Finally, Nira spoke, her voice soft but certain. You have shown that humans are not what I once believed. They are not fragile, not weak. They have courage, determination, and a spirit that cannot be measured. You have made me see your people and you in a way I never thought possible. Daniel looked at her, seeing the sincerity and respect in her gaze. It was not me alone. It was the chance to do what was right, and the support of those willing to stand beside me. You stood beside me, Princess. Without your help, I could not have succeeded. She gave a faint nod, her eyes reflecting the glow of the chamber lights. Perhaps, Daniel, she said, the future of our worlds is not just about rules, trade, or power. Perhaps it is about understanding, courage, and those willing to act for the good of all. He smiled quietly. Perhaps it is, Princess. Perhaps it is. For the first time since arriving on Velora, Daniel felt a calm that was not just relief, it was hope. Humanity had earned a place among the stars. And in standing for what was right, he had formed a bond with an empire, and with a princess who had once doubted him. As the council adjourned, the emperor called for a small gathering of leaders to honor Daniel and the bravery shown that night. Delegates came forward, shaking his hand or bowing slightly. Yet the moment he remembered most was Nira's presence, her steady gaze and quiet acknowledgement. Your courage will not be forgotten, she said one last time, softly, as they prepared to leave. You have shown me that even the smallest flame can light the darkness. And you have left me, speechless. Daniel nodded, understanding more than words could express. In a universe filled with power and danger, it was courage, honor, and integrity that truly mattered. And it was these qualities that would shape the future of humanity and perhaps, of Velora as well. As he walked away with the Emperor and his guards, Daniel cast one last glance at Princess Nira. The bond they had forged in the shadow of danger would remain, a quiet testament to the courage that had changed the fate of worlds. And in the halls of the Ilari Empire, a young human diplomat had proven what it truly meant to stand tall, to act with honor, and to inspire admiration without raising a weapon, without demanding glory, and without asking for recognition. The galaxy had changed that night. And so had hearts.